How's everyone doing tonight? Come on. How's everyone doing tonight? Thank you so much for being here. If you don't know me, my name's Toby. I'm the director of the RCAH Center for Poetry. I am strictly here in a business capacity tonight. I'm going to tell you some boring things and I'm going to leave and you'll never see me again. So we're very excited for tonight's reading. We're coming to the end of our 2025-26 season, which is kind of hard to believe. Our season was called Poetry is a Living Thing. And I think it's fitting that as we're coming to the end of the season, we're taking a moment to reflect on the work of publishing poetry. If poetry is a living thing, it is because people are doing immense amounts of work on behalf of other poets out of the love that they feel for the art. Editing, reading, offering suggestions, design, all of that work is mostly unpaid in the poetry world, and it reflects people's commitment to making poetry something that lives and breathes out in the world. So we're here tonight to celebrate Wheelbarrow Books, which is now in its 9th year. Founded and run by Anita Skeen, Professor Emerita at the Residential College in the Arts and Humanities. And we're also here to celebrate student poets because the winner of the 2026 Balocating Prize will be announced in just a little bit when Thomas Lynch comes up here. I wanted to start by acknowledging the finalists for this year's prize. We had an exceptionally exciting pool of student poems to look at this year. I had a lot of fun reading them, and I felt like it really reflected just the range of different kinds of poems that people are writing on campus right now. There were so many different ideas about what a poem could be and do, and I found that really invigorating and exciting. So our 10 finalists are Casey Conklin, Charisma Holly, Gabrielle Yuri, Nusha Firazuki, Frank Jeffries, Lee Stykes, Juno Birsch, Jenna Wagner, Jeremiah Young Walker, and Farah Kavarana. I'm sorry about butchering many of your names. We hope that you will enjoy tonight's reading, and we hope that you will also join us for our upcoming events. We still have a packed calendar through the end of April. Next week, we have 2 big events. On April 7th, we are passing the laurel. There's a new Lansing Poet Laureate, Subhan Nurkuli, and so we are investing her as Poet Laureate at the Robin Theater on Tuesday evening. And then on Thursday, it is the Blurred Realities Poetry Slam at the MSU Museum, which will feature many, many MSU students in competition for the Slam Championship. April 15th, we are doing a collaboration with the College of Music where people will be reading poems alongside Debussy's Preludes, which will be performed by graduate students in piano performance. And then we are closing out our year with the Festival of Poets Theater on April 22nd and 23rd, right here in the RCAH Theater. It will feature probably somewhere on the order of 10 to 12 student plays being performed for the very first time by other students. And then it will conclude on the 23rd with the debut of a brand new play by Joy Ellen McSweeney called Killanova, which prominently features Kim Kardashian. So I don't know how you could miss that. I mean, that's going to be really amazing. So please grab a flyer, sign up for our email list as you leave so we can keep you up to date on all the great things we have coming up. And with that, I will turn it over to Anita, who will introduce tonight's readers.
I have a few things to say tonight. I always forget that when you stand up here you can't see a thing, which I used to think was a blessing, particularly when I was reading, so I didn't get so nervous. But I'm going to be here for a few minutes, and I'm going to introduce both of our readers at the same, while I'm up here so we don't go back and forth. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Annie Balocating, who the prize is named for. But to start off, because I'm now the series editor for Wheelbarrow Books, which, as Toby said, started about 10 years ago, and many of you young poets, I hope will find your way perhaps sometime to submitting manuscripts to Wheelbarrow Books, because we are looking for first books and we are looking for established writers too. We've been around for about 10 years. When we started Wheelbarrow Books, I was very interested in publishing first books because I felt it was very hard for a poet to get a first book out. Now I think it's equally hard to get out your second and third and fourth books. But we started off doing 2 books a year, one by an established poet and one by what we call an emerging poet. COVID came and blew the bottom out of everything, as you all know. And after COVID, we are now down to doing 1 book a year, but we alternate between the emerging poets and the established poets. Tonight, the winner of the Anita Balocating Prize is getting $500, which is pretty cool for 1 poem. And for winning the Wheelbarrow Books manuscript contest, you get $1,000, which doesn't seem, you get $500 for 1 poem, you get $1,000 for 65 poems. Something's wrong with that equation, but that's the way the poetry world works. We have a list of judges of national repute, of which Thomas Lynch is one. Naomi Nye, Mark Doty, Tahimba Jess. I could run down through the list, but I won't do that for you. I did want to show you a couple of books. Our most recent book, and I have to give kudos to the MSU Press here because of their great designers. The most recent one, Singing Under Snow, which is timely, but we should have maybe Breaking Forth from the Grass next or something. Anyway, that was the most recent one. Our very first one was called Taking Care of Time, and it was written by a nurse practitioner, and it's about caregiving from many perspectives. We've come to know some of these authors quite well, and one of my favorites is Smuggling Elephants Through Airport Security. This is by Brad Johnson. He was here last year. Carolyn Forche chose his book, an unlikely pair, but they did well together. And also we have had Daniel Lassell, whose book, Spit, is about growing up on a llama farm. And his book was chosen by Gabriella Calvacaresi. And then we also have one of my very favorites, Marion Boyer's Ice Hours, which is about the Shackleton expedition to Antarctica. I don't think I've ever been as cold in my life as I was when I read this book. And the other interesting thing about Marion was she submitted to Wheelbarrow Books and was a finalist, but did not win. She revised her manuscript and she won 2 years later. And her book was chosen by Carol Davis. But I'm so proud of our readers, our judges, the design people at the MSU Press, and everybody, the readers, everybody who is involved in bringing new voices into the poetry world and sustaining older voices. And we could not do this without the help of the interns who read manuscripts for us, other poets around the country who read for us, and a group of patrons who donated time and money to get this endeavor off the ground. And we're very grateful for all of those people. We now are working on collaboration with the Theodore Rettke Foundation up in Saginaw. And in fact, Julia and Tom will be going from here up to Saginaw on Friday to do a poetry roundtable at Theodore Rettke's, the house Theodore Rettke grew up in. And if you don't know Theodore Rettke and you're a Michigan poet, get with it. You should. Music, music, music. I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. I learn by going where I have to go. And more. So that's what I'm going to say about Wheelbarrow Books. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Annie Balocating, and then I'm going to introduce our 2 speakers. I first met Annie Balocating when I was the director of the Royal Program in the College of Arts and Letters, and Annie was one of 60 freshmen accepted into the program the first year of its existence. This was a wonderful, creative, exuberant group of young people who formed lasting friendships that took them well beyond their years at MSU. Annie Balocating was at the center of these friendships. Everyone liked Annie for her infectious warmth and smile, her creativity, and her sense of responsibility. She became the archivist for the Royal Program, keeping a scrapbook for every year of the activities students were engaged in, the poems and stories they wrote, the places they traveled. I don't know how many pictures she took in her 4 years in Royal, but because of her, we know about the Royal Players, the 1940s radio show production, the Royal Writers, our trips to Stratford, and other activities and events. Among her talents was a keen interest in language. She was a Russian major for a while, later becoming an English major. I discovered she was a fine young poet too. Several of the poets in the area, including myself, Laura Apol, who is here tonight, a recent Lansing area poet laureate, a retired English professor, Diane Wachowski, and a few others formed a poetry group that met once a month to look at our work. We invited Annie to join us. She was the only student in the group and younger by far than the rest of us. But she always came with an interesting poem to workshop and gave us good feedback on our own poems. Annie eventually moved from poetry into working on issues of social justice, even spending time in Rwanda in the years of the genocide. Had she chosen the life of a poet, I have no doubt she would be one of the outstanding young poets the Center for Poetry would be inviting to come tonight, not only because of her talents with language and her work on important social issues, but because when Annie heard that the RCAH Center for Poetry had been established, she was the first person who contacted me and offered a $500 donation to help us get underway. At that time, she and her husband, Jerry Coulard, another former Royal student, were living in New York City, where Jeremy was teaching Spanish in high school, and Annie was a graduate student at the New School for Social Research. They didn't have much money, but they wanted to share what they had a cause they believed in, promoting poetry at MSU in the Lansing area and beyond. Tonight, and every year, we honor Annie's vivacious, creative, and altruistic life with the Annie Balocating Prize for Poetry, keeping alive both her memory and the encouragement of young writers at MSU. So that's just a little bit about Annie. Now, I'll tell you about Julia. Julia McConnell is a lesbian poet and a librarian. She once wrote a poem called Why Librarians Wear Cardigans for her library's newsletter, which ended up going viral on social media. If you Google Why Librarians Wear Cardigans, you can learn all the reasons librarians wear cardigans, one of which is to cover up their superhero t-shirts. If we ever needed superheroes in our libraries, it is now, and I have no doubt that Julia McConnell is one of them. Her poetry is smart, courageous, full of struggle and delight, political and personal. In addition to her cardigan and superhero t-shirt, Julia told me she owns 6 pairs of cowboy boots and says she would not be opposed to acquiring a few more. I have seen her in her cowboy boots at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico and in Oklahoma City. And tonight, I think she might be wearing pair number 7. One of the first poems I remember reading of Julia's was in a class at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, a class on ekphrastic writing, where Julia portrayed through words a photograph of a woman. Foreman of the Detasseling Crew was the title of the poem, with the sharp eye and intensity of Dorothea Lange or Walker Evans. Her poem showed us clearly what was there, but as with skilled photographers, it showed us what was not there. Her chapbook, Against the Blue, was published by Finishing Line Press in 2016, and her publications include writing in the San Pedro Review, River Review, Right Hand Pointing, Plain Songs, Screen Door Review, Lavender Review, and other journals. Originally from Oklahoma, Julia currently lives in Seattle with her partner, her poodle, and her Jack Russell Terrier. I would like to introduce Julia and her work with a paragraph I wrote in the introduction to Landlocked, Julia's book, which won the 2022 Wheelbarrow Book Poetry Competition, which was judged by Thomas Lynch. McConnell's portrait of Oklahoma is not one to be found in a tourist brochure, but it is endearing and enraging at the same time. She shows us the push-pull of what she loves and what she fears, her rich red dirt past, and a future she hopes to find just beyond the horizon. There is harshness and tenderness here, political commentary and personal vulnerability. She sees her home state as a half-feral cat mewing at the back step. In Tulsa, 1998, she tells us, late summer evenings we'd drive down Riverside, bouncing over bumps, seeking mirages of glamour in that petroleum town, its Art Deco ghosts, a stone church on every corner. In a guzzle that's a meditation on the word work, she contemplates the botched execution of Clayton Lockett. Finally, in How I Spent My Summer Vacation, McConnell writes, green all but gone by late summer back home. heat and humidity oppressive, I long for a suitcase of my own. Of this book, she has made her suitcase, constructed it of books, boots, and the blank page, packed it with eagles, packed it with elegies, love songs, postcards, Grandma Minnie's wedding band, and much more. With a nod to William Carlos Williams and to the truthfulness of poetry, Julia McConnell sings, "Who shall say I am not the most beautiful woman in my town?" So you'll hear Julia, and then you will hear Tom Lynch. It isn't hard to remember Tom Lynch once you have read his work or heard him read. He's a poet, a columnist, and an essayist. His collection of essays, The Undertaking, Life Studies from the Dismal Trade, won the Heartland Prize for Nonfiction, the American Book Award, and was a finalist for the National Book Award. It has been translated into 7 languages. A second collection of essays, Bodies in Motion and at Rest, won the Great Lakes Book Award. His work has appeared in the New Yorker, Poetry, the Paris Review, Harper's, Esquire, Newsweek, on and on and on and on. The question isn't where and what has Tom Lynch published, but rather what hasn't he written and where hasn't he published? My answer would be, I don't know. His commentaries have been recorded and broadcast by the BBC Radio, NPR. His work has been the subject of 2 documentary films, Learning Gravity and The Undertaking, a film by Karen O'Connor, and Mira Novoski, aired in October 2007 on PBS stations nationwide. It won the 2008 Emmy Award for Arts and Culture Documentary. Lynch is the recipient of grants and awards from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Michigan Library Association, the National Book Foundation, the Avon Foundation, and so on and so on and so on and so on. He is also a regular presenter to professional conferences of funeral directors, hospice and medical ethics professionals, clergy, educators, and business leaders. He has been an adjunct professor in the Graduate Creative Writing Program at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Tom Lynch has been called a cross between Garrison Keillor and William Butler Yeats. In the ways he reminds us not only of how we die, but also how we live. Before his retirement, he lived and worked in Milford, where he was a funeral director, as his father before him was, and his son behind him has become. Perhaps it is partly his work in this profession, partly his Irish heritage, rich in Celtic myth, musical language, struggle for survival, and earthy humor, partly his ordinary but not so ordinary existence in Milford, Michigan, as a book called Still Life in Milford, collection of poems, that gives him a remarkable window into the human soul and psyche. On a personal note, I was first introduced to Tom Lynch through his book, The Undertaking, by my friend and colleague Marcia Aldrich in the English department, and have read my way through a number of his books since then, the most recent being No Prisoners, a novel about the pursuit of meaning, purpose, redemption, and forgiveness. I read it late last fall, shortly after the death of my father, a World War II veteran, as is Doyle Shields, the protagonist of the novel, and was aided in looking at some aspects of my father's life through a new window. No Prisoners became a part of my healing process. From his work and writing, we know Tom Lynch is the man we want to talk about death, but he is also the man we want to hear about life. So first, we're going to hear from Julia McConnell.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me here at MSU, and thank you to Anita and Lori and Tom and Toby. This is just such an honor. I'm so pleased to be here. I'm going to begin with the poem that Anita mentioned, Foreman of the Tasseling Crew. I have it here. This poem is inspired by a photo of my Aunt Helen, foreman of the Tasseling Crew. She sits in the cutter's high seat, turned away from the machine's wheel, her muscled forearms tanned dark against the rolled up sleeves of her men's white shirt, buttoned at the collar. Men's blue jeans too, cuffed over her heavy leather boots. Her hand rests on her knee, a cigarette between her fingers. It is the end of day. The photographer on the ground, one of her sisters most likely, in this all-girl detasseling crew, points the camera so that she is framed against the freedom of the wide sky. In just this moment after pulling the brake, killing the engine, and lighting up, she shares a laugh while staring into the middle distance. She's earned it, this little bit of peace, having completed a long day of men's labor, the fields of corn a satisfying tally. For just a few minutes more before it's time to move on home and cook supper, she is no one's wife, no one's daughter or mother. She is simply Helen, finishing her cigarette. So I'm going to do things a little bit backwards. I'm going to read from my new manuscript and then end with Landlocked. Like Anita mentioned, I'm a public librarian and things get kind of wild, often, daily. And she asked me while we were eating dinner for a good story, and I thought, I can't tell you because then I ruined my poem. So this poem's called Incident Report for the Northwest Library, September 2024. Ms. V tells me that Bill Gates has hacked her library card again and stolen her identity. Does paranoia make people feel less lonely? Oh, Ms. V, I don't know how I can help. Have you tried calling the FTC? A kid throws up over the witchcraft books, so we don our latex gloves and throw them straight into the dumpster. Later, a man throws open the front door so forcefully the glass shatters. In the bathroom, salad is scattered over the stalls and French dressing is sprayed on the ceiling. Outside, a pint of pink ice cream is melting upside down on a picnic table. Crows are feasting, squirrels are jumping out of trash cans high on Doritos and purple bubblegum, startling the librarians on their lunchtime walks. A patron requests a chord progression for Hank Williams' song, That Lonesome Whippoorwill, He Sounds Too Blue to Fly, and tells me he has trouble making his brain work ever since he nearly froze to death that one night. Let's face it, the Dewey Decimal System is as flawed and racist as any other human system, but it's what we've got to keep things in order. We want this world to make sense. Like the lady who calls the reference desk looking for a good number for a prayer hotline answered by a human and not a robot. I only pray when looking for parking spots, but I start dialing the 700 Club. When she calls back, I shout, she's blind and nearly deaf, numbers into the phone's receiver over and over until she has them memorized, long enough to call. It's nearly closing time. After this, she's on her own. And this poem is a poem for my friend Amber, another librarian. Withdrawn. High on nitrous oxide, I ask my dentist if he dreams about saving people's teeth. He nods. Of course he does. Unlike my dreams where my teeth crumble like crackers. I ask the hygienist if she enjoys her job. She rhapsodizes on the pleasures of scraping plaque, that feeling of clean. At the library, I love the look of a shelf after a deep weed. All the yellowed edges, all the dusties and out-of-date editions purged. On quiet days, I love to hide in the office, away from the chaos of a building where anyone can walk in. I settle into a nice long spreadsheet of call numbers, marking books for deletion, or I walk the endless shelves of cookbooks, weeding the duplicates and triplicates, sending them off to the book sale or the dumpster like a dentist discarding a dead tooth. The librarian's office is a windowless room with only one door. One day I heard yelling, footsteps, objects falling. I was stuck in the doorway, torn between running out to help and hiding, calling 911. It wasn't an active shooter. A man who had been coming to the library every day for a week, wrapped in a sleeping bag, who had said absolutely nothing, randomly attacked a teenager, punching him until the coworker intervened. I'm scared of going to the dentist, but I pretend to be brave. At work, I pretend to be in control, like Amber, who kicked out a patron for threatening staff. Months later, he was waiting for her in the parking lot where he shot her 11 times. I told my dentist I've overcome my fear of needles, and could he please numb me up just a bit more? We've all got a job to do. So this poem is for Anita, who once told me vegan hot dogs are pretty good. And it's called Seasonal Affective Disorder. I think it's okay. Seasonal affective disorder. It's the time of year when I cry over the steering wheel, or while chopping apples, or watching nature documentaries. Maybe I should stop eating animals, quit chewing nicotine gum. No more death or plastic packaging produced so my appetites are appeased. Or just start with the mammals. No slaughter of any creature that suckles, or octopi who frolic. But chickens, are they not tiny dinosaurs pecking each other bald and bloody? Let's send the roosters to fight our wars. The people in Gaza, at least, will have them to eat. All animals cry, but only human animals shed tears, an evolutionary adaptation to silently signify suffering. No wailing that might attract the wolves. I Google how to stop crying because my white lady whimpering is becoming embarrassing. The New York Times suggests 3 simple techniques. Push my tongue to the roof of my mouth, relax the muscles of my inner eyebrows, and pinch the skin between my forefinger and thumb hard, enough that it hurts. So I wrote most of Landlocked during the pandemic. I had recently moved to Seattle, and I was really trying to explain Seattle to people, or explain Oklahoma to Seattle, and they think it's the same as like Nebraska or Michigan. You know, it's just all one big amorphous place to the West Coast, unfortunately. And so I ended up writing a lot of these poems in conversation with Elizabeth Bishop, you know, a queer writer who moved around quite a bit. And so in this poem, I imagine I take Elizabeth Bishop on a Tinder date to my local lesbian bar in Oklahoma City. And it's inspired by her poem, Arrival at Santos, and it's called Elizabeth Bishop Swipes Right. Here is a bar, here is a Wendy's, here, after an endless diet of horizon, a parking lot. Asphalt cracked and buckling and shit. The narrow spaces are all taken outside the unmarked building with a heavy steel door. Across the street by the real estate office is where you should park so your windows won't be bashed. Oh, tourist, is this how this country is going to answer you and your modest demands for a different world and a better life and complete satisfaction of love at last and immediately after 24 years of denial? Get out your ID. Friendly is waiting, the gruff butch behind the glass, writing down your name before buzzing you into a cloud of cigarette smoke and country music. This is still Oklahoma, of course, not unlike any other bar in this town, and football on TV, even some crosses on necks as we make our thirsty way to the long line at the bar, myself and fellow lonely heart Miss Bishop, navigating through the chaos of women spinning each other's arms across the dance floor, while Brooks and Dunn wail about Lorca's Neon Moon. Oh, Miss Bishop, this is not the kind of joint where you order wine. How about a beer or a whiskey or a shot of tequila? Here comes Desi. She's just shaved her head home from deployment. Let's grab that table while we can. There, we're settled. Listen, not a lot of strangers here, so if they don't know you, they're not likely to talk to you. It takes a while. Buy some drinks. Share your smokes. Soon you'll be a regular or on the next bus out of town. Do you want a two-step, throw some darts, or just sit back, watch the show, and chain smoke until last call at 2 a.m.? We'll call you a taxi. Just kidding, no taxis here. We'll walk you to your car, drive behind you, or tell you to text us when you get home safe, but never let you walk into the parking lot alone. We're drilled into the interior. So this is the Chazal that Anita mentioned in her introduction. Work, a Chazal for Oklahoma. State motto, labor conquers all things. I learned about the battle over the lethal drugs on the radio while driving home from work. There are thick reference books on pharmaceuticals and slim volumes on death at the library where I work. I know women in Oklahoma who wear uniforms and make prisoners stand behind a line for their work. There are lawyers who defend murderers and rapists and try to keep them from the execution chamber for their work. I try not to drink too much wine after contending with screaming toddlers and grumpy customers at work. 12 journalists watch Lockett struggle from the gurney, moaning. To be witness is their work. News of the botched execution scrolled on screen while I watched The Voice, where the singers, uninterrupted, perform their work. It is unethical for doctors to execute, so prison workers administered the drugs unqualified for such work. I was taught in Sunday school it is a beatitude to visit prisoners. This is a saint's work. Sometimes I watch Law and Order to see justice at work. After his vein collapsed, after the viewing window was closed, 43 minutes after his first injection, Lockett's heart stopped its work. Clayton Lockett shot Stephanie Neiman and buried her alive. This is evil's work. Stephanie's parents live with their grief. This is their work. Compounding pharmacies mix drugs that Europe won't sell to us. We pay them for their work. The next morning, I lie in bed and listen to the news. I know we are all complicit in this work. I'll end with my Dear John letter to Oklahoma. It's called My Ex-Girlfriend, Oklahoma. Dear Oklahoma, by the time you read this, I'll be gone 6 months and you'll be getting out of lockup for your second DUI. Listen, I'm sorry, but you are a bad girlfriend. You keep breaking my heart and embarrassing me in public. I won't be sending any checks, but I'll write you poems about the way you make me sweat, the way you sing like locusts devouring a field, the way you flash your tornadoes and promise me a thunderhead. I love your big, oily heart, the way it fracks, the way it wails on Saturday night at the Blue Door when you call yourself Freedom, say you're from Bartlesville when you're really from Sayre. I love the way you wrap your legs around the closest girl to your bar stool and lick her up the back of her neck. Sunday mornings you roll into church a little bit late and a lot hungover and never say nothing about loving the sinner. Everyone knows the best way to end things is to get her name tattooed on your body, but I never got that scissor-tail flycatcher to fly across my shoulders. My new lover, who's never even been to a Walmart, asked me, "Do you miss your home?" I don't know what to say, so I point up and say, "I miss the sky." Maybe it's the sky I need marked across my body, the emptiness I love in a shape I can touch. Maybe I don't need wings anymore. Maybe I need an anchor. Maybe I need a whole flock of birds perched on a telephone wire against the setting sun. Maybe a pump jack, a dust bowl, the deed to some mineral rights, Oral Roberts' praying hands. Maybe I need wind, hail, flash floods, and ice, a whole cycle of storms rotating across my body to get away over my grief about walking away from you, your crimes and your prayers, your crumbling textbooks. I thought I could be a stranger. I thought I could fill my pockets with rattlesnakes, fist fight with the dust, every glancing blow a farewell. Oklahoma, you're trash. I'm trash too for leaving. I've gone broke trying to bail you out. I can't fix you, but this won't ever be over. No one needs me like you.
Thank you, Julia. That's a tough act to follow, as you say. I should begin with gratitudes to everybody associated with the Center for Poetry for inviting me back here. It's always nice to be back in East Lansing, and it's so nice to be outnumbered also, which is, I think, the sort of the bar for poetry readings. If you're outnumbered by a dozen people, it goes into your obituary. So, along with that obituarial introduction you gave me, it's going to be hard to live up to that. So, thank you very much, Anita. I'll read a couple of poems. This is one called Corinne Among the Fronds of, is it basil or basil?
Basil.
I say basil. People in Michigan say basil, but there are plenty of places in the world, if you say this, they know it's basil. I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to read it out. Corinne is a young woman I hired some years ago to be an assistant, to do my grocery shopping and watch the dog when I'm out of town and have contentions with me when I'm bored. And sometimes I have to get a food taster because she gets into it. And I think there's 40 years difference in our age. I knew her grandfather very well, which doesn't cut any mustard with Corinne. But it wasn't so long ago. It was actually in September of 2020. A difficult year for many reasons. But Corinne came driving into my driveway in September and ran out and harvested all the basil in my garden, saying that there was a frost coming that night. And she brought it in and held it up. I took a photograph of it. And it reminded me of that painting we all see in art history. Who was Isabella or a pot of basil? Yeah, I can remember that. That's the only thing I remember about art history. I have no visual aptitudes. Corinne Among the Fronds of Basil. The leafy basil from the garden fills the kitchen with a whiff of summer's losses and frames the figure of a prepossessing girl among these fronds saved from the coming frost. She adds pine nuts and olive oil, shredded parmesan, fine crushed bulbs of garlic pressed into a greeny pesto, boils pasta, as if the sky weren't actually falling. Hell and high water in one dire week, the bottoms falling out of everything, 200,000 dead of pestilence, my long-lost daughter Heather lost for keeps. Halfway through a leap year taking her leap into the beckoning embrace of the abyss. Desperate for good riddance, cold release, we got her home, alas, to let her go again. And good John Lewis gone to his reward, who stood upright on Black Lives Matter Plaza. No justice, no peace, our marching anthem. To see him crossing Edmund Pettus Bridge, bludgeoned, horizontal, and victorious. The word will come tonight of RBG, notorious for justice and dissent, equality of genders, loves and sexes, against all poverties and contagions. Corinne upholds these end of summer leaves with gratitude against begrudgeries. And then because poems spawn other poems, do you know how certain words get popular, certain concepts get popular among poets who are publishing things? Like I spent all of the 80s and 90s trying to get, is it Katie in a poem? I remember writing to the American Poetry Review saying, I'm not a brunette and I don't have katydids, but would you consider these? He didn't, but the word I've been thinking about a lot lately is ekphrasis. which is a visual image which spawns another art form. It was so nice to be walked through those panels of illustrations and pencil work on the way here, because it sparks things in people who don't have visual aptitude. So this is called ekphrasis. I took this photo, and this related to the poem I'm after reading you, and yeah, you'll notice that. I took this photo of Corinne last year and wrote a poem later the same day, which was the day she saved the basil in my garden from the frost she heard was nigh. Her standing in my kitchen holding those greens, the aspects of her, that look of longing, put me in mind of William Holman Hunt's old painting of John Keats's poem called Isabella, or a pot of basil, inside of which the pot, not incidentally, the head of Lorenzo, her murdered lover, is decomposing and hidden from view. So we keep ogling Isabella, her languor and pining, her ample bosom, who has the face of Hunt's departed wife, who died in childbirth some months before he finished this canvas. It's an old story, refashioned by Keats from Boccaccio, the way all poets borrow, great ones steal, according to T.S. Eliot, that thief. Or was it Picasso? God only knows. The way one image leads to another, the snapshot, the sudden spark, the scene that brings something separate into being, the seedling that becomes something the seed could never itself have quite imagined, connecting the bits of one creation to bits and pieces of another. The rooting, ramifying urgency that pushes the new thing into the light. The poem that I made that day became one of many in a book of poems called Bone Rosary, a collection of beads by which we keep track of being and ceasing to be, those living mysteries in light of which all we do is sit in silence. My daughter used to call me El Jefe when she was working at the funeral home. Before that saddened panic rose in her, they diagnosed as schizophrenia. It kept her estranged from us for 15 years before she took her leap from off the bridge in Marin County, California. The Golden Gate became her sad line's end. My friend Joan painted a portrait of her. I hung it on the bedroom wall upstairs. We gather what we can of brokenness into a place where we might reframe it as restoration or a sort of wholeness in the horrid face of desolation. There's more to this, of course, but mystery wants more than anything, alas, our silence. So, back to the photo and the poem. Ekphrasis, with a side of illusion, the senses and the imagination free-ranging in the way they take their cues from life's long study and experience. A Colombian poet named Tallulah Flores, which I Englished as Tallulah Flowers, a plural noun or verb, it's hard to know. She asked, would I read some of my poems for their festival, Poem Rio, featuring poets of the Caribbean? Except for stays in the Lesser Antilles, Cancun and Casa de Campo once, I couldn't figure out why she'd asked me, but chose some poems to do with flowers, with gardening and growing things, with all Montbretia, or rhododendrons. So Corinne among the fronds of basil became Corinne entre las hojas de la Oaxaca. And when a visiting theologian spoke the Spanish version of the poem, for she in fact had worked the Caribbean in service of her church, the Anglicans, all the versions of it seemed connected. The mysteries of love and death and silence, the sound, the sense, the sight of timely harvest, the women in my kitchen and my poems, the beauty of their being and their gifts, whereby the broken heart is nonetheless still beating out its possibilities. A moment of balm, a tonic, possibly a romance involving flowers, their meaning, trees of knowledge, of good and evil, Romeo, Juliet, Flores and Dance Le Fleur, Adam and Eve. I'm living in a Leonard Cohen tune. involving a woman and a river, a distant country and the theater, something on canvas, cast in bronze or song, by which mammals discern the way of other mammals. Let us grant that it involves an island, a bridge, a ferry, a water crossing, an open grave, an empty sky, the sun, the moon, the loving body, and ourselves alone. Sometimes the pool of sorrow overflows. Sometimes the shit that happens overwhelms. And still the unanticipated gift appears. That sudden beneficence beyond imagination. There it is. The moonlight in the bedroom window gives a glimpse of her naked and unabashed, and curling into your embrace with ease as if she came to reckon with your pain, the long years of damage and estrangement, the thankless, luckless, sorry circumstance of being you, yourself, in the sore world. And these are surplus to requirements. Her willing body adjacent to yours, and her pressing herself onto yourself, an abundance much like grace itself is, unearned and undeserved, much the same as creation's favor with its creatures. The fervor of lovers for lovemaking, the reverence for beauty and for being, the texture of longing touch exposes, or liberties taken in smallish doses, a sudden catch of the breath, a sudden seeing, or the way that Isabella's weeping never brought Lorenzo back, but greened the basil, and beckoned the poets and the painters to make something out of such contingencies. The way Corinne could sense the coming frost, a hankering for pasta and pesto sauce, the common table shared, the table talk with fellow palmers or with passers-by, by which we get a sense of the connections, a sense withal that we are not alone in our heartaches, longings, and bereavements, our losses, lack of lucks, the brief achievements we might be, with any luck, remembered for. I don't think I've ever had the chance to actually read poems with a librarian. And I'm not going to let this opportunity pass without reading the poem that I wrote for the dedication of a new library in Highland, Michigan, where they figured they may as well put me to use of a Saturday, and they'd raise some money on the side off the event. And all I can think of is when I go into a library, surely you live with this day in, day out, Julia, the sense that nobody brings their second best dish to the library. This is the best they could do if it makes it to the shelf, right? And so you're doing everybody's A1 dish. This is not the chili. This is the its special dish. To be among these elegant voices. The only thing you have to know about this is if you go to the Detroit Institute of Arts, you know that gorgeous Bruegel we have there of the wedding feast in the open air, you know which one? Where the feature is all the knees and cod pieces. Everybody loves it, and the colors that Bruegel put into it. This image of the plump-faced peasantry, all knees and cod pieces, dancing round someplace in Belgium at a wedding I found among the bees in Argus, European. The way the book is printed, how it's bound, is a matter of indifference to me. I want what's in it. The 1,000 words worth on every page, the contemplation of its creator's life and times, the memory of the moment I first beheld it in Detroit at the Institute of Arts with that bookish girl I was trying to get, as we used to say then, biblical with. Was it 1970? Was it April? Was she as lovely as I remember? Was it, yes, that's it, oh yes, she whispered, or have I confused her with another? But wait, the place is full of echoes now. Across the room among the W's in English romantic poetry Wordsworth is pacing out his iambic tune. The child is the father of the man. His footfall sounding in the garden's gravel, while Keats and Coleridge proceed uphill. Or maybe it's that one word, biblical, that sets us rummaging through the scriptures. Job, that long-suffering protagonist, hapless, damaged, put upon by friends. Blessed be the name of the Lord, he yet insists in that vexing, god-awful, answerless book. It disturbed his people. It disturbs us still. Sometimes, says Alan Duggan in a poem, disturbed people go to the public library. He's right, of course. Books can make us crazy, or give us hope, or make us question things. Where else but in our public library can we indulge our curiosities, imagination dancing in the round as one notion chases after others? To be among these elegant voices can get you going off in all directions and get you back somehow from whence you came. Take this place, for example. All these choices, hobbies, reference books, biography, fiction, magazines, all these places, people's names, shelved and silenced alphabetically. Some dead and gone, still singing all the same. Emily Dickinson, Mark Twain, James Joyce, who's Molly and Leopold, who's Huckleberry, whose after great pain, a formal feeling comes, becomes sweet fodder for our hungry minds, or common guidance for our ruminations, timely as the moments we occupy. Today's the 8th of June. What else is new? My wife and I are going to a wedding. The world's supply of heartache is secure. There's love and hate and mayhem everywhere. We've come to dedicate some space to words, some rooms for visions and remembrances. It's good to look through windows on the world from a corner of a quiet place. Good to keep the records and corrected texts, histories and newspapers and ancient tracks of what we human beings were doing here. I was just browsing in American poets to find some good words for the nuptials, some verse by which to toast the newlyweds when I came across this poem called The Dance by William Carlos Williams. What it says about the tweedle of bagpipes, about a bugle and fiddles and rollicking measures, and Bruegel's great picture, the Kermes, makes me grateful for the things we find in books. This painting of peasants dancing in Flanders, the poems on paintings and marriages, the books therein, the places where the books are kept. And I think maybe before I have the high honor of bringing up the winner of tonight's prize for poetry, and this is a warning to Farah Havarana, to get ready for your moment. I'm going to finish with a poem called Accordion. I wasn't sure I wrote this poem, to tell you the truth, but I asked around among the friends that I thought might have written it, and none of them claimed it, so I took it and put it in this book. And I never read it without being reminded of two jokes about accordions. One belongs to Tom Waits, who says a gentleman is someone who can play the accordion and doesn't. And the other is by that wonderful banjo-playing singer. Her name escapes me now. That sounds right. Say it again.
Rhiannon Giddens.
Rhiannon Giddens, yes. Who, when asked about perfect pitch, she said, that's when you throw the banjo in a heap and it hits an accordion. Accordion. And I should probably say thank you. And I think I'm speaking for Julia too. When I say, for you to come and listen to this blather is really kind. I mean, it's like going to the shrink and not getting a bill for it. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. And you can tell your adult children or grandchildren or significant others that you attended a poetry reading. This will make them fear you in ways they don't currently. So, use it as well. accordion. We'd been invited to a neighborhood do, a graduation maybe, or a barbecue. We were underdressed, the missus and me, but I had my accordion, which is unfailingly a compensation. Whatever happened, there was this shoot, like the slides we played on in our childhoods. It descended from the center of the neighbor's yard into the heavens, beyond the sky, like a spiral staircase without the steps. And it came into my brain, they'd like to hear something from the topmost heights of it. So I began to climb on all fours with the accordion on my back, wheezing out the occasional chord, myself huffing and puffing with the baffling labor of it, my wife's sweet face gaping heavenward, the locals wide-eyed with the spectacle. Everything was shaky at the top, which I accomplished. I know that for sure. Though I can't for the life of me remember what number I played them, or the applause that would have just as certainly followed. We were fairly winded, the accordion and I, what with the whole performance. Now, I am very honored and very pleased to call up Farah for her, I think she's going to read for us her prize-winning poem. And the poem, which I had the good luck of reading when I was in the Lesser Antilles a couple weeks ago, has such a moment in it, a moment that I think you'll all recognize when we come to a certain point in our life when we know that we are finite, that we are, and the numbers are convincing on this. They hover right around 100%. So, but Farah has gotten the moment just right in a marvelous poem, which I'm hoping she will read for us, called The Way Things Are. Do I have that right? The Way of Things, thank you. And Farah, are you here? Thank you. You can say whatever you want.
I just wanted, first of all, I want to say thank you so much, but I just wanted to say before I read the poem that I wrote this at a time when I think I was very angry at the world, and I am, like, since I wrote this, I feel like I've had so many positive experiences with other people, and so I do want to say that it's not all hopeless, and I do also want to say that I see this poem in a different way now, which is that I took a time in my life where everything was very painful, and I think something really great came out of it and something meaningful came out of it, and so that's kind of how I like to see this now. So this poem is called The Way of Things. I wish I could tell you about Christmas morning. I broke down sobbing at the hotel breakfast table at the sight of a little boy in a striped neon jersey yelling chirpily across the room, and thought about all the filthy things he was going to do and have done to him. Father, yes, I know the way of things. It comes for us all in the end. It's just the world looks a tad bit blacker through my eyes now. I guess I've never been able to stand the unstoppable shrapnel tide of corruption it brings, even to fat-cheeked children who have done no wrong, none at all. Thank you.
I forgot to present you with this actual certificate, suitable for framing. I think you could make copies of it so that all the people who wonder why you do that stuff with poetry, you can give them a copy for their office. Thank you very much.
Let's have another round of applause for all of our readers. And for all the finalists for the free class. We're going to have a reception upstairs in the Lookout Gallery with books for sale, and if you would like to have more time with Tom Lynch, and how could you not, he will be giving a workshop tomorrow at the East Lansing Public Library at 2 p.m. Registration is required. There are posters around the building, QR codes. You'll find your way to the right place. And thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.